Welcome to the KELT workshop today on inverting the classroom. My name is Lee Altier, KELT director, and I'm joined by Mike Kotar and Martin Vandenberg and
Jarl Whitlock.
Jarl
Whitney. Whitlock.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I usually get the Jarl part spelled wrong.
That's a hard one. Today you're going to hear three different perspectives on a model that's being advocated for changing around how we teach. And really the impetus for this workshop came from our keynote speaker, Tom Angelo, who was here this last month. And he talked about a couple big ideas. One was backward planning, and our last workshop was on that. And then today's workshop really came from people who were intrigued about this idea of an inverted classroom model, but wanted to hear more about it. And so from my inquiries around campus, I found three professors who have been exploring this idea and trying it out and had varying results, I understand. So we're going to look at that today. Now, what Tom mentioned, a couple things. He pointed out that we spend a lot of time, many of us, lecturing in a classroom, and we're spending a lot of time on easy stuff and not on the more difficult assimilation of material. And he suggested that this model could be a way to turn that around. I first got wind of this from, this was back 2008, National Teaching and Learning Forum newsletter. And it's an article by a fellow named Gary Smith at University of New Mexico. And when he started trying approaches where he demanded students to do the homework, to read, to pick up the information at home, and then started allowing classroom time for what he considered the more valuable stuff, the group discussions, working on problem solving, case study discussions, that sort of thing. The students got upset. He said, "Do my students know why I asked them to learn this way?" And he said that his evaluations were going down while his assessment indicated that students were learning more. So the next semester he tried something. The first day of class, he asked them some questions. Thinking of what you want to get out of your college education and this course, which of the following is most important to you? Number one, acquiring information, facts, principles, concepts. Second, learning how to use information and knowledge in new situations. Third, developing lifelong learning skills. So what did the students answer? Two of the students said that it was important for them to acquire information, but they were far outweighed by 21 saying they wanted to learn how to use information in new situations, and 13 wanting to develop lifelong learning skills. After that, he said, okay, which of these things is the easiest to acquire on your own? And almost unanimously, everyone said the first one, acquiring information. You know, picking up definitions, learning about fundamental concepts. They said, we can read about that, watch videos on our own. And they all agreed that the other two, actually applying, understanding how to evaluate information, how to evaluate the use of that information. That was stuff they found more difficult and appreciated the value of having the instructor there. So he had buy-in. That second semester, he had the students supporting him on the approaches that he took. So this is really, in terms of Bloom's hierarchy here, it's the acquisition of knowledge that students said they could pick up on their own. Jackie, a couple of seats up here. And it was this part that the students agreed was the most valuable use of their time with the instructor. So I want to move on to some examples and invite Mike up here to talk about his class in education. And Mike tells me that he's kind of a dabbler in new ideas and constantly trying things out. So without even being aware of the term inverting the classroom, he started doing this.
Well, I'm glad you said that. They spent the last month trying to explain to me what an inverted classroom is. This is the class I'm going to focus on is my EDT 523B Science Methods course.
Pass up the microphone. I walked away.
So it's a true science methods course. Just a catalog description. In case you're interested, it's a credential course. It's in the teacher education program, and just by coincidence, so one of my students who's currently in the course, allowing me to experiment with some of these ideas, is sitting back here in the back row. And most of you probably will recognize her because she's the woman on the Chico State homepage climbing the wall.
It's a nice movie.
So, I guess the message is really, why would I do something like, why am I changing things this year, this particular year? Well, I tend to tinker a lot, but a couple things happened to me in the last year. One is it was time for my most recent 5-year review. So I took that as an opportunity to read through every SET that had been done in my classes over the last 5 years. And I thought, maybe I should respond to some of these things and make some changes. The other thing is it's just very straightforward. You know what you do in a class. In the credential courses, we tend to have these schedules that run short courses and slightly longer courses, but everything seems somewhat jam-packed for time. And so I love to provide a lot of feedback to my students, and I do that especially on a lesson planning assignment. And I found myself remembering back to the days before we had online submission, where you would go through this huge stack of paper, and you'd write all over it and everything, and then you put it out for student pickup, and maybe, out of 100 students, maybe 5 or 10 would get picked up. And you're thinking, I just spent hours and hours and hours, days, providing feedback that I thought was important. Okay, so we go to electronic submission. I can email the assignments back with my feedback. But I started thinking, this probably is not the most effective way, because the students in the courses they're very busy as well. They've moved on to the next thing that they have to do to get to their teaching credential. Wouldn't it be more effective for me as a person who knows something about science education and knows something about learning to provide that stuff that I love them to walk out with more in the form of a consultant? So I came up with a couple of ideas I wanted to try. One is I have a system, and I think Melissa could confirm that I'm trying to get my students in science education to use the system. Okay, well, the system is very important to us in elementary science because we know, every science educator in this country knows that science can easily be limited in the elementary classroom. It's not going to be the number one subject in the elementary classroom. So we'd like to be able to have our teachers go out, have a system. They know that it's fairly efficient for them to plan good science lessons that really involve their students. Well, there's another kicker right there. Really involve their students. So, we do classes, and, the typical thing in science education for decades has been to do demonstration lessons and demonstration activities. And, I have my favorite activities that I've used for decades, sure. And I love presenting those activities. And, I love to ask the question at the right spot. I love to have a little bit of humor involved in it. All this I got to thinking was, if I wanted to increase involvement, the thing to do is to, one, get my students up front more. And so here's this next slide. I should have moved this earlier. This will kind of give you, I tried to say, well, what's different then and now? So the then side of this is basically what I did in spring, okay? And the now side shows you that I'm doing some of the same kinds of things. It's still a science education course. Emphasis is still on inquiry learning and how a teacher could get to that inquiry stage with elementary students. But the now thing has more integration in it. In fact, I guess main themes would be greater integration, greater activity for the students. This semester, every one of my students will teach one of my old lessons. One of the things that I would have loved to present, and get the reaction from, I'm stepping to the side, and they're up front, and they put up with this. This is the wonderful thing. They put up with me letting them know that they were going to teach about a day or two before it happened. So that's one of the pieces. I've completely revised the course website so that now the course homepage serves as a focal point. There's none of this floating around to all the other stuff, all the other options that Vista has for you. You go to the course homepage, you can get resources, you can see directions for assignments, you've got places to submit assignments, all right off of the course homepage, make it straightforward. And I've done that with all of my classes, so that's been the thing. I think it's working. I've tried to talk less in class so that I would open up more time for my students to be engaged. And then the other thing I did was created these groups, and the idea behind the groups was we can get started on all this unit and lesson planning as grade level groups. And I let them select the groups that they want to be in and select the content area. We go through a process of identifying concepts. This is where I was going to be the consultant. And it hasn't met all of the things I wanted it to do, but I think with some tweaking it will eventually do better. But in order to get appropriate buy-in from the students in the class and to make sure that nothing bad happened to anybody grade-wise, I told them up front I was going to put in a period of time at each class session where they would have an opportunity to collaborate with their colleagues to work with those groups, and that I'd be available then to serve as that resource. during that collaboration time, rather than having them go out and have to work on assignments after hours, whatever. What I've seen happen is efficient groups can get much of the work done in that time that's been given in class. So we're still doing approximately the same number of activities. We've worked in this collaboration piece. I think with some tweaking again, it's going to work out all right. There are fewer assignments, more readings. Whatever, mostly, you could probably confirm most of this, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a great group of people, really a wonderful group of people.
I was going to say I was in your class in the spring, so I was in STEM model, and it was still a lot of engagement. We got to do activities each time, but I see the benefit in the now. So working with the grade level groups, I really like that. I think that's a good contribution.
I had started on that approach about 3 years ago before we got the new assessment. And then, we were in the department, or from the state, we were told we had to do this individual assessment. Well, I had to back away from my group staff in order to work out the individual assessment. And then it was just over the summer that I came up with the idea that if I created PLC groups, each unit would be big enough so that each student could take an individual piece of it. That would be their individual assessment. That would satisfy the state. That one. So you got to, work around things. I can take questions or however you want to run this.
Questions for Mike.
Well, Mike, what about fewer assignments? Can they return them in? Do you allow them?
Oh, yeah.
And how do you get them to make sure that they're doing the readings? That's
a glitch. I've got to work on it.
Oh.
Mike, how large are your classes typically?
This particular one is one of the smallest classes I've had in years. It's 24. But typically in the credential program, our classes are around 30 to 35. And in the grad program, they usually are about 35.
Other questions?
So the website as opposed, our homepage as opposed to Vista?
Yeah, Vista, but using just the Vista course content page and blocking almost everything else.
Oh, I see.
So that students have to go back to that page, and then the organization of it is a syllabus folder, an assignments folder, all the assignments, all of the resources for those assignments are in one folder. I use a lot of sample lesson plans and sample student work and I've done this for years, but and what I've noticed too is you put out samples, people look at sample, they get a better idea than the people in some previous semester. And, I've seen really much nicer work by putting a lot of samples out.
Can I? Sorry. I was just going to build off of what you said. Putting everything on the homepage is very beneficial because I remember having to go through the modules. It was hard to find things. Mm-hmm. And for all my other classes, I've had to have everything right there. Way easier to navigate. Sometimes you have to go through
this was an idea that your class came up with.
Yeah.
Remember when we debriefed the class at the end?
Yeah, so not having to go through so many things to get to what the assignment is really helps.
The beauty of having teacher credential candidates as students and teachers in the master's degree program is you can always ask them. And of course, they're either getting experience or experienced teachers. And my goodness, you really get some critiques. But, you get some really good ideas from other teachers here.
So, Mike, do you have a sense of whether students are learning more?
Well, let's ask Melissa.
I think so, because we do a lot of activities, and I think that's where a lot of the learning comes from. And then it's really great that we get to work on our unit plans when Mike's right there, and we can just go straight to him with our questions instead of, like you said before, when we're like at home, we're tired, I just want to get this done, and I just write down whatever. So it's nice to have that class time, and yeah, I'd say it produces better work.
So what you're saying is that you actually do a debriefing with the students at the end of the semester that is apart from the set evaluations that students turn in, so that you can get more or less, you can ask for clarification.
I try to do that as I go along, and then, this is being in education. What happens to you? You decide that you could probably write better questions than are on the SATs.
Mm-hmm.
So, because what you're really looking for, I mean, from my position, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for help to improve the course.
Right.
I don't really need to know if I provided a syllabus because I've done that. I'd rather have somebody give me comments back and make suggestions as to what didn't work for them. The other thing I started doing with all of my classes is if somebody comes to me and they say, I was confused by, especially using Vista, if I was confused by something in Vista, even if they send me a note, say, I can't find this or that, and I'm confused by how you get there. My response is to tell them how to get there, but also ask them if they have a suggestion for what would make it less confusing. And I've done that as well for years, with the idea that I get some good ideas about how to make things better.
I just left class about an hour ago with a thought, thinking, how can I get them to read? So if you have any thoughts on that, how to make sure that they do read when you expect them to read? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I can think of all the standard things, and I've kind of avoided doing them because, I think in some ways, I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of pressure we put on credential candidates. We have them out in the schools, all week long, and then we're sticking these courses in, basically in 3-hour slots that put them under extreme pressure. And then, of course, we have them meeting all their state requirements. So, I think there has to be a balance point. But, yeah, I'd love to have some wonderful ideas to make sure that they're reading it. We basically use the California Science Content Standards as the textbook. So, I think teachers ought to know how to use that. That's a little different approach than having a textbook, a published textbook. The other thing we've been using a lot of, I wanted to tell you about the classroom. This is also kind of an issue for me. So, in my classroom, I have resources, I happen to think that the classroom is probably one of the best ones at Chico State. And it's the classroom I taught first in when I came here 26 years ago. But the resources are hands-on science materials. I have a set of teacher manuals in the classroom. So as students are working on units, they've got teacher manuals they can refer to. I also have about 10 years worth of Science in Children. That's the elementary journal of the National Science Teachers Association. I used to be field editor for them. Lots of activities, and then of course it's a completely computerized smart classroom. So we can get out away from our classroom quite easily and get to resources. So it makes for a good writing environment for teachers who are planning units and planning lesson plans.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
I'm next. I cheated a bit because I once gave a presentation about my interteaching method, so my slides are going to look all fancy. I just changed the date. Not really. I knew I had less time. So I use in some of my courses, a method that's called interteaching. And it follows what is considered this inverting the classroom method, where you don't, I don't talk in class, the students talk in class, and with the idea that they do more useful practice in class. So it comes from I'm in psychology. And so it comes from behavioral psychology, that if you want someone to learn something, they have to try and practice that. And then if they do it well, you tell them if they did it well. If they did it poorly, you tell them they did it poorly. And then with the feedback, they learn what they are supposed to be learning. And so this is just from the article in which the interteaching method was first presented. And the idea is that learning is not getting a bunch of information into your head. It's learning to do something that they weren't able to do yet. And so I use this, for example, in my Psych 323 Human Perception course. Explain to me how depth perception works. And at the beginning of the semester, they cannot explain it to me. At the end of the semester, they do. And so now they have learned to do something that they didn't used to be able to do that. And so what I see myself responsible for is creating a situation in which they are able to learn this, basically, this skill. That's what I consider it. And so I don't think that it works well by me telling them how depth perception works, because then it goes in one ear and out the other. And so if they have to figure out how depth perception works and describe it and talk about it and do stuff with it, then hopefully that will work better. So that's one idea. The other, this is their idea. For my idea, it is how can you use that class time, right? It's a Tuesday, Thursday class, hour 15 minutes that you get to be there all together. And that's kind of a precious moment, you know, an hour and 15 when you have all the students in the room with me, and I'm supposed to be the expert and be able to kind of help them with that. And if they put away their cell phones, they're all focused on just one task. We are here to learn about whatever that course is about at the moment. How can you best use that time? And is it best used by me talking to them for an hour and 15 minutes? Because again, they could watch a video of me talking, right? And what's the difference between them doing that on their own or actually doing something more useful? And so that's always what I was wondering. What can I, it's such a special, from the whole week. And what's the rule again? For every hour you spent in class, how long ago? 3 outside of class, something like that, right? And so I don't know how many, the research shows that, that 3 hours is kind of not happening, right? And so then that class time becomes even more important, right? And so how can you use that best? And how can you use it best? So this, this was supposed to be all interactive, but this system breaks that rule. And so this is where the interteaching method comes in. A lot of students do a lot of the work. I do some of the work. It goes kind of in the sequence. It begins with me guiding the students, which means I create what's called a preparation, that's what I call the preparation guide, and that's on Vista a week before that class happens. It's usually on the Vista more at the beginning of the semester, but usually a week before. And this is what this guy is, and of course you can see that all now. Can you zoom? It looks like it. Does anyone else? You can zoom? Well, you can kind of, you're teachers, you know what this kind of document is, right? Some instructions, and then a bunch of questions, and those questions are about the material. And so what happens is that this is on Vista week before, and then it's assigned. I say, next week we do preparation guide number 6, is what that says. And so then what they do is before class, read the material with this guide, it's called the guide, next to them, and as they read, they will find the information that those questions are about. And then I tell them not to answer the questions, but just take notes. Notes that will be useful later to answer the questions, and those notes they bring to class. And so most of these questions, with Bloom's taxonomy that Lee just showed, I try to make them kind of in the mid-range, the understanding, application, and analysis kind of questions. And so they do that, and they better do that, otherwise the teacher gets angry. And so I give them the guide, they prepare, they bring their notes to class, and in class they get put in groups of 2, 3, or 4, depending on class size, usual practical considerations, and randomly, so every week a new group, and then they share those notes among themselves, and then actually answer the questions. And so everyone comes with a bunch of notes, having read the material, and usually I try to make the question so it fills up the whole class period, and you really try to do it as well. And then I'm around, and I have usually 1 or 2 TAs who are around as well, master students in our graduate program, and we are there to answer any questions they have. And so now the students are actually talking about the material and discussing it and thinking about it and writing about it. And so they do that, they turn that in, that set of answers that they create, they turn that in, and then I grade it, or the TAs grade it, and lots of red ink on it, lots of comments, and then now the technology comes in, I scan those and email them to them, usually in about 2 days, so that for the next class period, they have that back. And then, from those answers, I can usually tell what they get and what they don't get. And then the next class period is almost a normal lecture, but I only get to talk about the stuff where they need help. Because usually the basics, I don't have to go over that because I know it, because I saw they did all this reading about it and writing about it, so why would I go talk again? And the definition of this is that, and the definition of this is that. We can just go straight into the more interesting parts. And then, so the last part is, and then the students learn. So that's kind of the ideal of how it works. So I do it in the Tuesday, Thursday class. So on a Tuesday, they do this talking, discussing, writing, and then on Thursday, I do a lecture, but sometimes I'm done after 15 minutes, even though it's an hour 15 class, because I have explained to them the stuff for which they needed explaining, and then we might do something else, a 1-minute paper, or stuff like that. So then I can again stop talking, and they can again do something more active. So now the question is, it sounds all great, but does it work, right? And first the bad news, not always. I tried this in my Psych 101 course, but you can probably imagine that this takes some sort of level of maturity for the students. They need to do the reading. When they are in class, they need to know how to discuss this material, and the material needs to lend itself for discussion. And Psych 101 is a strange course because it's, this week we do the brain, this week we do perception, this week we do memory, this week, and it just goes so quick that it's not really the usual way of doing 101. It goes so quick, you don't really have time to go into depth. It's ridiculous. If you look at the Psych 101 textbooks, each chapter has the amount of detail that you could fill a whole semester with. And so then it's just difficult to ask the right kind of questions at the right level. Plus the students coming out of high school often, they're not in the right mode. And see, I have question marks over there because they are used to the idea that learning means I listen to someone, and then later on the exam I show that it's that information is now in my brain too. And if you tell them that no, you're going to learn by doing stuff, they feel cheated. What do you mean? I pay tuition and you're not going to give lecture? What's that supposed to mean, right? And so I don't know the answer to that, right? How to get them out of that passive mode. It's probably the trick is to just do it often with them and show them results that you see, like who was it that you showed that whatever that guy was. Gary with the 3 questions.
Yeah.
Yes. So plus you need some background knowledge to be able to discuss something, right? To discuss something at a higher level of Bloom, you need to know some of the topics. So you're not trying to figure out what the definition of something is, but you can actually do something more interesting. So with 101, didn't work so well. I also do it in 2 of my 300 level courses where it works like a charm. And every semester at the beginning, I am always just blown away by how well it works. The first week in Brain, Mind, and Behavior, we talk about hemispheric specialization. Each half of the brain does, certain tasks better or differently or not at all. And instead of me talking about hemispheric specialization and lateralizational function and the modularity of those things, the students are using those terms. And they're talking to each other. All I do is to stand there for the first 10 minutes. I say, you guys are just all of you, not just a few of them who raise their hand in class. The usual 5 that's raising their hand and ask questions. They're all talking about it, right? And so that's amazing. Plus the level, the material tends to be, of course, a bit more a bit higher, you know. So you can ask questions such as, this theory that you read about, apply it to this situation. What would happen, right, if you change, you know, if you change something like that? And then they're talking about it, and they're writing it. So that works really well. Other people have done research on it, and this was neat. A husband-wife couple in a psychology department, and they both teach a course in research methods in psychology. And so what they decided to do, I guess, at the dinner table, let's test this interteaching method. And so they took turns, the same material, but then one was lecturing, the other one was using the interteach method. And they had 6 modules, I guess, in the semester, and they were just taking turns. So that they could compare the same material, the same exams, just a different method of doing the teaching. And in the top line is when, you know, one of them used interteaching, and the bottom line is when one of them used the lecture method. And on average, that makes a 9.2% difference in the grades on the exams. Same exams, same material, right? So instead of C's and B's, they were getting A's and B's. Yeah, the data shows that that increases the learning. I sometimes do, you know, mid-semester evaluations. Was completely my own. I create my own questions. I want to know what are the students thinking about this. So I don't know if you can read this, but just one of the questions was, you know, what do you think about this teaching method? Is it working? Just, you know, give me some general comments. And almost all people are just very positive about it. I saved this one for last because it's the best one. But you can see that people also feel that, you know, it made them much more involved with the material instead of just sitting there for hours. Plus, the desk chairs are often so uncomfortable, and sitting there for hours just listening to a guy with a Dutch accent is not pleasant. And so now they only have to listen to me when they had a question to it, right? So from the students, they are also quite positive about it. But what's interesting is that, is that the next one? Let's go straight to the second bullet point here. What's interesting is that they don't want to get rid of lecture completely. The first time that I used interteaching Tuesday, Thursday class, what I did was I taught the first half hour, and then they did interteaching for 45 minutes, every single day. And some students on the mid-semester evaluation complained about the lack of coherence. They still wanted me to put it all into a bigger perspective so that they could see how it all fit together in a more general picture. Which, why? Right? So now it's Tuesday interteaching, Thursday me talking at 10, creating the bigger perspective. But they did still seem to need it. Which to me, you know, afterwards, yeah, of course that makes sense. It's difficult for them to see how all the details actually work together. So in that sense, you know, getting rid of lecture completely might be a bit exaggerated, but it did work. Of course, the problem with this is that you have a weekly assignments to grade. They work in groups of 3 or 4. My classes are about 50, so there's usually about 16 of those. Which it's not that bad, but I do want to give good feedback, and so I rely on TAs to help me with that, and then it's okay. But I do think that for this method to work, again, the learning outcomes, how high of a level of learning do you want? If you want them to learn 200 facts every week, then this doesn't work, right? Because there's not enough time to discuss 200 facts and write kind of paragraph-style answers about them. If you want them to think about broader concepts and apply them and analyze them, then it works quite well. And that is the interteaching method.
Questions for Mark?
Yeah.
Is this possible to do without TAs? Is there any way that we can do this?
Now, what about those of us who don't have PAs?
Yeah, of course it's possible, right? Because the first year I did it, that was my first year here at Chico State, and I wasn't important enough yet to get TAs. Plus, you know, the way it works now in the department is that often a graduate student will approach a faculty member, hey, do you need a TA? Yes, of course, right? And no one approached me that first year, so I did it myself. And so it's just, you know, how much grading do you want to do? It got pretty efficient after a while because a lot of people make the same mistakes. And so I ended up kind of often writing the same comments. Maybe it was an hour per week of grading per course in which I did it.
Couldn't you make those comments and corrections on the Thursday lecture? And
During class.
During class.
During class. Yeah.
That took a lot of class time.
Yeah. And there was enough variability in the mistakes that, and you guys said it like this, but that's wrong because of that reason. And you guys said, but you guys said, which is good because you included this idea. That would, it would be nice to include it more in the lecture that I didn't do anyway. Yeah.
I do study guides that are similar. I teach in nursing, and I hold the students accountable for their material. Now, I'm first semester faculty, so take this with a grain of salt. But anyway, I've been teaching for years, however, in nursing. But anyway, so what I decided to do was I would do study guides to make them accountable. And so what I do is I got stuck with the same, I'm grading 36 papers.
What do you mean by study guides?
A study guide is very much similar to what you have there, where I'm putting out case scenarios. Okay, Johnny was in a car accident, and he had a loss of consciousness, and what do you think this is, and what would you do? What were your nursing interventions, and that kind of thing, so that you think about what you've read and what you're going to do with it. And so what happened was there were so many that I was spending hours and days, grading these, and very much the mistakes seem to come in patterns, so we can talk about the mistakes. However, I went a step further, and what I did with my students, and I was really afraid it wasn't going to work, to be quite honest, but I was willing to try it, that I told them that they could work together, that the only nurses that scare me are nurses that go through that practice solo. When you have a medical system, nurses that practice together and ask for a nurse consult are really the best nurses, because you're using your resources behind you, around you, behind you, in front of you, everywhere. So I wanted them to work together. Well, they on their own, they developed these teams, and they said, do you mean that our answers can be the same? And I went, yeah. If you have a team of 4 or 5 people and you work on answering these questions and bring them to class, yes. I mean, I will look, highly on those of you that can cooperate, that can do cooperative teams.
It's more to the peer work too, because it's in class. And sometimes people don't come as prepared. If I tell them,
right.
Well, what are you thinking? They don't think whatever, right? But if the peers tell them, why are you not prepared? Which happens.
Right.
They will never do it again.
That is absolutely right. So they really do help each other learn. So they had to take an assessment test recently, and I'm teaching pediatrics. So I was told that the group did higher in pediatrics than they've ever done. So that was wonderful to learn that this kind of thing can really, really can work well.
You're raising your hand.
Yeah, you kind of addressed it, but I was going to ask, how do you address social loping? Because you said you only get 62 papers.
Okay.
But if you have
what I've been doing for 2 years now is when they come in, they just have to tell me how much reading they did, and they show me their notes, and then the good ones go with good ones, and not so good ones work with not so good ones. And worked really well. No one has ever lied or cheated. Some people come in, sorry, I didn't do any reading. Good, then go get your book, go work with the other people who didn't do enough reading. And obviously the answers will suffer, but at least no one feels like there is unfair grading going on, that none students feel anymore that, well, this person was just sitting there and didn't say a word, but still got the same grade. It worked really nicely.
Thank you, Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Martin. Lately, that I didn't have a lab, and didn't want to diss my students. Hand it over. Is it possible for me to get the flashlight? Oh, sorry. I had a feeling I was going to screw things up. Well, he's saying no.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Do you find attendance lower because, you know, if I didn't prepare, I don't want to, so I just don't show up. Do you have that at all?
It's hard to say. You know, 2 people maybe per class don't show up. 2 out of 50. It's kind of difficult. I think it's not.
Yeah.
It's not bad. Because you know, by showing up with your book and working with other people who also have the book, you still get some points. And usually by maybe 6 or 7 out of 10 instead of 0 points.
Is there any way that they make up their points if they don't show up?
Well, they get to drop their lowest score.
All right.
We do it 12 times in the semester. Only the highest 11 count.
Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Whitlock. I teach the Department of Biology. And I've got a little bit different approach because I teach a very large group of students. I kind of like to tell you about the evolution of this class. You know, as biologists, we love evolution. We talk about that. Things have morphed in this course. I was interested in how many students you guys have because I have 2 different sessions that have 148 students each. So large sections. So let me tell you about how this came about and what we used to have and how it's moved along to what we're doing now. And it's a work in progress. Before, what we used to have for biology, this is GE biology, all the students have to take it. We used to have them do 2 lectures a week, 1-hour lectures. Typically, the lectures were 48 students. I used to teach this at VUE. It was 48 to 60 students. And then 1 3-hour lab. In other words, they applied what they learned in lecture to what they were doing in lab. Also, homework, papers, because we wanted them to have some writing skills, quantitative analysis skills, things like that. That was before. Then someone decided to switch it over from biology to a different course, online. Still 48 students, but what we did was we decided to have an online lecture, and it was a voiceover lecture, which was very different from what we used to have. Voiceover lecture, they'd go online, listen to a lecture, maybe have some slides, then also do a quiz online. They would come in 1 day a week and have a discussion and some kind of activity. Now, I'll show you what we did in discussion for a moment. I can tell you what doesn't work and what does work. I love this. And also, we moved having a 3-hour lab to a 2-hour activity. And the 2-hour activity was, you know, it's kind of okay, because we're talking GE majors. They don't need 3 hours of lab, but you still want them in science. They love the lab part. They get the hands-on. They get to see what you're talking about and apply it in the real world. We like that a lot. The discussion with this, the online lecture, wasn't working that well because when they come and see me, basically I'm embarrassed to show this, they would see something quite a bit different. And I don't think we would have that on there. What they would do is they'd come in, they'd say, okay, did you learn something this week? Because they had to read everything online. They had to listen to an online lecture. They basically had to teach themselves. Then they'd come in, and we'd give them a clicker quiz. Has anybody used clickers in here? Do you have luck with them?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they were a nightmare for us. Because they didn't have them set up, and there was no batteries, and then there was like all this crazy stuff. So you basically would spend the first day trying to show them how to use the clickers, but by then you've lost them. Because remember, I only get them 1 day a week for 50 minutes. And once you've lost them, they just like, they never come back. So we were using the clickers. Last semester, we decided not to use clickers anymore because we were spending a lot of time in class using clicker quizzes. And then we would do a clicker quiz, and after each question, if you got it right or wrong, you discuss with them, what did they get right? What did they get wrong? What was going on? They would also do in-class activities. This was a typical activity. We're talking about evolution. We would put them in groups, ask them about what you think the significance was of these butterflies breeding, interbreeding. Was it working? Was it not? And this was classes of 48. Once again, I had 4 sections of this, so you can imagine, even in groups, there was quite a bit of grading. We don't have TAs over in the Spanish department. So I was grading a lot, but it was worth giving them something to do, something to come to class for. This semester, we switched it to, instead of classes of 48, they're classes, this is 45, 48, basically 3 sections together, so classes of 148. There are 2 sections of classes of 148, and meeting with them only for 50 minutes a week. So my partner and I, who does the online portion of this course, said, you know, you're not really going to get much if you're trying, a big group like that is not getting a lot out of it if they're just doing online lectures. So what we've done is so they have online reading, and we've applied a new forum called Avria, where we've taken a book, we've chosen exactly what we want in the book, chapters we want to use, and there's online homework that they have to use. And they can do it with the book. And the book is actually really quite lovely. It's very understandable and very easy. It's very graphic. They'll do that online. They'll also have an online quiz, just like before. However, instead of before, when they come to me in discussion, we talk about the material. And I have to agree, Martin, you said that. They like to hear stories. They need to have the explanation. This week we were talking about Darwin. Darwin, cool guy. People don't realize he was a theology major, how incredible his work was, where he went around the world. We asked them for interpretations of what they thought of Darwin. I get a lot of this activity in this, not necessarily that they're handing in to me to grade, although they do a couple of homework assignments in this course. You're going to grade them, I think he's great. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, I think it works out very well because they like having discussion. And I give them a lot of examples, and I always interact with my students and ask them questions and what they think, what's going on. And they get to ask me questions about material they didn't understand before they did the online lecture. Online quiz, I gave them a quiz and an activity, and they really didn't get a lot of material out of it. So I think it's working much better. Now the activity part is really where it ties in, because in science we usually always have a lab or an activity. So they not only get a discussion where they understand the material, but then I send them off to an activity where they actually get to apply what we talked about that week online. Is that homework assignment? In addition to what they talked with me in discussion, they get to apply it in some way. So they're actually getting 3 components. It's actually 4, because they're doing an online homework, an online quiz, having a discussion, and then going to an activity. And you have to remember that these are huge classes, and you can't have it. Love to have the interaction that you guys have, and privilege of doing classes like 24 students. I do have classes of 24 students for higher level classes. I also have a class of 60 students for human genetics, and we do a lot of in-class discussion, and it's great. We have a lot of one-on-one. When you're sitting through an auditorium of 150 students, it's pretty hard to do. Although I'm amazed at how many students actually show up for class. 10 o'clock in the morning, they show up, and they're not sleeping all the time either. It's really good. So anyways, that's usually what we do in this, and what is working and not working. Our online classes typically are 3 themes. We cut it up in the semester, and they do an ecology theme, a human disease theme, and an evolution theme. And this discussion, again, was based on the 3 segments, clicker quizzes. And let me show you what that used to look like. We just talk very briefly and then do these awful clicker quizzes, where they would have to, let's see if you guys can answer this. Phenotype, basically what the old discussions were like. I didn't have time to put up with the new discussion slides, so I'll have to take my word for it. These were not, by the way, not to lay the blame on anyone. I kind of inherited this course, so it's a class and it's involving. It's a new. So we revisited this course, Applia, which is the online using the books, online quiz, one discussion a week, which is really a discussion. I'm sorry to say it is a lecture. They only get me once a week, and I feel like they deserve to have some explanations. And it's talking, but not just talking, but they're actually getting the explanation of what they're learning that week, hopefully. And again, it's the online activity. So, I'm going to just go through this really quickly. All of that. Okay, observations from what I've seen in this course, from the beginning to the end. First of all, I think Biology 101 was okay. We probably didn't need 3 hours worth of lab. And I have to agree, they needed to hear me talk for 2 hours a week because that's what it used to be. The online portion is actually better. They do pretty well with the online activity versus an online lecture. The stats are still out because this is the first semester we tried the Applia program where they do an online activity in addition to me doing the discussion. Now, what the trend is obviously to do online, huge courses. Online, there's differently in that there's a cool article in the Wall Street Journal this Saturday talking about online courses. And the news group that owns Wall Street Journal thought it was so great that they actually bought into one of the places that teaches online courses. And they actually did some statistics, and if you want to read this, you can. What they found was that online works okay if it's not all online. Students do not do well at all. It's probably no surprise to any of us. They don't like all online. They want to talk to somebody. Like Mark said, they want to hear some explanation. That's what they're paying for. Online came in handy when they wanted to do something like in high school, they wanted to take gap classes because they couldn't get higher classes, and of course they're getting rid of all the advanced placement classes now because of cost money. Came in handy if you were a student that wanted to go and get some other classes that are above your level. I've had homeschool students who do great with online because they're used to studying on their own. And I don't remember, I think maybe Martin said this, I don't remember Martin or Mike, but either one, somebody said, hey, what they don't do well with is they're not really great about studying on their own, which is really true. They don't study well on their own. However, I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case in the future. Right now, the students we're getting are not used to that. They're not used to studying on their own. They're used to having somebody talk to them. Now, it may be as time progresses that they're going to be able to just learn everything on their own. However, I have to make the point that, not necessarily everything online is correct. And it is good to be intuitive and go look online. But, I see that people do want to look online and find their own information, but they also like it to be clarified by an instructor. So what they found was, interestingly enough, for big classes, the best was a hybrid of online and interaction with an instructor, which kind of makes sense. And especially with huge classes like this. This is a GE course, all the students have to take it. Okay, how many of you love taking biology? I see the look on your face that you're like, I actually, as I can get them out of there, I think I loathe biology by the end. I'm like, yeah. Mostly I want them to be really happy about taking the course and feel like they've gotten something out of it. And where they get something out of it, hopefully it's in the activities and maybe perhaps in the discussions we have. So, let's see, I think that was probably about it. I just wanted to think about this because I thought it was really interesting. And it is, again, a work in progress, so I'd love to give you statistics. something like that. I don't know if anybody teaches this larger class. Yeah.
When you say a hybrid of online and like discussion or lecture, is it saying online lecture or just online like portions of the class, like articles?
It used to be that it was online lecture, then they came and saw me, and we'd have a clicker quiz and an activity. And then they'd actually have another activity. Now what we have is they learn on their own. They have to read and do some homework online at the app or with the book. Then they have discussions and then the activity, of course. So that's kind of more of a hybrid. So you're putting some of the burden on them. But what I like to see is really try to have it, I want to always hit the information at least 3 or 4 times. They read it, if they don't understand it, they get it from me, then they do it in lab or activity.
Can you give me an example of an online activity? What would that entail?
Basically, they can go online, and I guess I could probably take me a couple of minutes to get online, but basically, they go online and say that week was on molecules, and they would click on the animated molecule and look and see what the molecule looked like, how hydrogen bonding was, and then after that, they would do a homework assignment. So there's a lot of animation in this program. Yes.
All those animations were created by the company, right?
Exactly. Yes. Absolutely. No, thank you. Lord, and to be honest with you, this company worked out really well, and just found this out today, but we are the Berkeley and us are the first ones to use the biology faculty program. So we're kind of a pilot program for this. This is the first semester we've used it, but I have to say so far it's worked much better than what we had before with the online lectures. They also create the PowerPoint presentations.
Do you have any assessment data in terms of are they learning better?
No, we don't. We're, the first test they had, it seemed, it looked like 5% improvement. Second test, about the same. Now we're, 2/3 of the way through the semester. I just have my SATs this week, so I say I'll just take it for the team because they probably, if they hate it, they're going to, say it on the SATs. So I'm not sure because we're going to have to compare the data and see what the scores were. We tried to keep the points very similar. The points for the activities are the same, and the points for the discussion and lecture are pretty much the same. So it should be pretty comparable, but we have to wait. The jury's still out. Can't tell. I will tell you this much. I teach one of the activities. The students seem so much happier. They like it.
So you're saying there's 148 students, and do they meet, are your discussions like half the class, or half will come on one day and half will come on the other?
Oh, no, I didn't clarify that. It's 148 students. Is it 148 or 144?
144.
144 per discussion. So I teach to 144 students.
So how do you have a discussion with, that's what I was going to ask next.
It's pretty stinking hard.
Calling a lecture a discussion is
I'm not we're calling it discussion, but what I will say is I'm really shocked at how many students I actually do. I probably get 75% of the students showing up. And I'll bring up a subject that people throw out to them. But I really am giving them explanation. You can't really, let's be honest, call it a discussion. I can call it a discussion when I have 60 students in human genetics, and I could have called it a discussion when I only had 48 in this class. They're not. Typically now, I can't call it really a discussion. It is more us discussing things than me talking to them. You're right. Yes.
I was wondering what the cost is per student, in terms of purchasing any materials, textbooks.
This is actually kind of cool about this, and I'm glad you asked. We took the book that we wanted, and like I said, it's a really good book, and they custom made it for us, and it comes in loose leaf form. Only the chapters we knew we were going to cover, because obviously you can't cover everything in a GE course. It comes with online access for them to do their online homework, which is they have to have $70. So it's much cheaper than the general biology book was. So we really made sure, and I might be lying, it might be 80.
$80 per student.
Yes, which includes their online access, with online activities, things like that, in addition to, it doesn't come like this, it's like this. So it's fairly inexpensive for a GE student.
We're out of time.
Yeah, I'm talking too long, sorry about that.
Let me thank our 3 speakers today. And I'm sure if you have more questions, they could stay around for a moment to answer some more. Want to mention that our next workshop will be after the spring semester starts, beginning of February, and it's going to be on preparing your dossier. So if you know people who are in that mode,